What's up, YouTube? You're with Got That Funk, and this is a video response to my friend Laura Lila and her video, Your Life Story. Very thought-provoking video. Thank you for the questions that you've asked. I'm going to get to answering them directly in a second, but I wanted to give you a bit of background on me first. Way back before we ever met each other, a year and a half or so ago, I did a video called My First Awakening, which talked about how when I was about 8 years old, my brain just sort of opened up one day and I started to consider my own mortality, the apparent futility of life, and what I wanted to do to mitigate against that futility, and I started to set goals for myself, things I wanted to achieve during my life, and things I wanted my life to mean, and so forth. And most of the goals that I set for myself between the ages of, say, 8 and 10 are goals that I've pretty much carried on with all my life, and I find that very interesting. Even as far back as 8 years old, I was quite an idealist, and I'm still an idealist with a heavy dose of realism now. And I find it interesting that in many ways we are always the person that we have been our entire life, and there are certain aspects of us that never change, and most of the rest of it does change or modifies, matures as you get older. Anyway, so there's a bit of background on that, and let's get to answering your questions directly. Well, when I was a boy, I'm the product of a failed marriage, and I didn't really know my real father when I was growing up. And so I had it in my head that one of my most important goals in life was to fall in love with a woman and get married and stay married to the same woman for the rest of my life. I cannot possibly overstate how important that was to me when I was sort of planning my life out as a boy. And so, to fall in love and be married and remain married was definitely part of my ideal for life. By the time I was 10, I realized that I wanted to be in broadcasting. I wanted to be a radio DJ. I thought and still think it's one of the best jobs in the world. It just seemed immensely cool to me, what DJs do. And so there was that sort of aspect. I also had it in my head by the time I was a late teenager that I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. That was pretty important to me at the time. And I wanted to do a lot of traveling. I wanted to make a positive impact on as many people as possible. I think it's true to say, without any hint of shame, that I am something of a narcissist. Because even as far back as 8 years old, I was considering how important it was to me that whatever impact I had on people, that it was a memorable one, that it was something that was going to be positive, hopefully. But more importantly, I think, if I'm being honest, was I wanted to make sure people remembered me, that it didn't just come and fade away out of people's lives. That was pretty important to me and still is. Now, as I've grown older and matured and become less idealistic, or maybe not necessarily less idealistic, but my idealism now is peppered with pragmatism, and a heavy dose of realism as well. But I am still a bit of an idealist, and I'm perfectly happy to admit that. I'm still a narcissist, and I'm perfectly happy to admit that as well. I have an innate need to be liked and appreciated, and I would love it if I was understood as well, but you can't have everything. Anyway, so those things sort of factored into my idea of an ideal life. Some of the other ideals that I had for life, I wanted to have a son and a daughter, or a daughter and a son, whichever came first, but I wanted one of each. And I wanted to, if not build it myself, I wanted to have a house built specifically for my family to live in and for me and my wife to grow old in. I had this really quaint notion that building a home from scratch was really important, and that you could throw all of your identity into a house if you build it yourself, and so on. So those were some of my ideals for life. Question 2. In many ways, I am proud to say that I have lived up to a lot of the expectations I had for myself when I was growing up and as a young man. I did get a job in broadcasting, and I was on the radio for almost 10 years. And to this day, I think that's the best job for someone with my personality, someone who needs that little bit of attention, someone that likes to entertain. That's me in a nutshell. And, you know, narcissism isn't always an unhealthy thing. Some of us were born to entertain, and I put myself in that category. And while I was on the radio, I was a DJ in total for about 12 years. And I guess you could still say I'm a DJ now because I occasionally do raves and so on. But bottom line is, I achieved that particular goal for myself. Although when I moved to the UK, I had to give broadcasting up. And I also had, by the time I was in my 20s, my priorities changed, and I realized that monetary success wasn't as important to me as it seemed to be when I was a boy and a young man. Um, it seemed much more important to me to be happy than it did to be rich. And I didn't necessarily want to spend my life chasing the greenback. I wanted to be able to relax and savor things. And I always felt that people who were too ambitious were so busy acquiring that they were less active in the nurturing and less active in the doing of life. So that's one of the things where my ideal has actually changed. I've matured, I would say, through life. I did get married. I fell in love, and the mother of my children was my first wife. And we broke up. She left me for someone else. And it's actually a good thing that she did, because we didn't really get along very well at all. And that's an understatement. So, in a sense, it's probably better for everybody, all four of us, my kids, her, and me, that we didn't stay together. Even though it was super important to me to make the marriage work. It takes two to make a marriage work, and if one's not prepared to do it, well, you pretty much have to accept that and move on. So, and that's one huge area that my life has diverged in. I got married again, and I was with my second missus for almost 10 years, although we were only married for the last 3.5 of that. But and she and I really did think we were going to be together for the duration. But life throws you curveballs that you're not necessarily able to hit. So that's one thing. Um, Other than that, most of the goals I've had in my life, which I would have thought made my life ideal, either aren't important to me anymore or I've done them. Like, for example, it no longer matters to me to own my own home and or build my own home. I don't care. I'm quite happy to live in a house that was already built. I'm quite happy to live in someone else's house. It doesn't bother me. What matters to me is that my house feels like my home. That's what matters. And I have found that there are a couple of places that I've lived in as an adult that I did feel that my house was a home. And so that's one thing. Um, I moved to the UK, which is something I never would have thought when I was younger that I would ever do. I never thought I would leave America to live permanently in another country. So that was a big deal to me. But in a sense, it doesn't really matter because the whole world is my home now. Again, your perspective changes as you mature, and you realize that sometimes the goals that you set don't necessarily equal happiness. They equal fulfillment of a goal perhaps, but not necessarily happiness. And if you can achieve the happiness without fulfilling your goal, maybe the goal wasn't really as worthy as it first seemed. That's the way I think now, anyway. So let's get on to question 3. Well, I'm going to be 49 years old in June, and I never would have imagined that I would be at this stage of life with without a life partner. In a sense, if I let myself, I can get pretty depressed about the fact that I'm lonely and lonesome and all that kind of crap. But for the most part, I just get on with living, and I'm a pretty happy person most of the time. And I try and focus on the fact that I have so much out of life that I have virtually no right to complain or really be sad. I've loved and I've been loved. I know what it's like, and it's a good thing. And you're right, I miss it. I miss the companionship. I miss the affection. I miss, just having someone to share things with. I mean, that's a beautiful thing in life, and it's something that I miss. It's something I do feel a bit sad about when I ponder it. So I don't ponder it too much. Otherwise, I would be a pretty morose fuck. But for the most part, I consider myself a very lucky individual because for the most part, I have done the things in life that I set myself up to do. Or my goals changed as a result of maturing and realizing that the actual goal, the real goal, underneath all the labels you put on, the signposts you put on, underneath all of those things are happiness. And if you can achieve happiness by itself, how you do it is less important than that you do it. And I am 99% of the time I'm a pretty happy fucker, to be honest. I look at my kids who are adults now, and I'm so proud of them, and I'm proud of the job I did raising them. And you know, at the end of the day, as long as I know that everyone in my life who matters to me knows that they matter to me, all the other things that I didn't get or didn't do don't really matter. Not really. Um, every now and again, the ego sort of kicks me in the butt and says, "Hey, man, you should have done this and you should have done that, and you're less than you wanted to be, and all that kind of crap." But that's just insecurity talking, and that isn't really how I actually feel about my life. The way I feel about my life is, God damn, if I died tomorrow, the only regret that I would really say I have at this point in my life is that I haven't got a companion, haven't got anyone that loves me, that I can share my life with on an affectionate level as well. Other than that, I'm a lucky son of a bitch, really. So, yeah. I hope anyway, that answers your questions. But if not, feel free to ask me in the comment section and I will elaborate on any point. Um, Until next time, thank you all for watching. And Laura Lila, thank you for these great questions. It was quite thought provoking. I'm sure we'll talk again. Peace.